Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our very last episode of Exit Wound. I'm joined here today by three esteemed guests. You might remember Gabrielle Prieto and Shamere McKenzie from previous episodes, and today we're joined by the lovely Sunny Palmer, another amazing survivor leader. Ladies, thank you all for being here with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Now, the reason that I wanted to have three individuals in the studio with me today is because although our sisterhood connection is very strong, nationwide and in New York State, nobody can walk in each of our own individual shoes. So I wanted to bring together all of our unique and different perspectives in the studio with me so we can talk about this. So oftentimes, when we talk about the work that we do in the anti-trafficking movement and the system of prostitution and just our lived experience as survivors, it often gets very complicated. It can be traumatic, harmful, hurtful. It will bring up tears, right? I'm not going to get into all the things that we go through when we're by ourselves at home.
Oh, yeah.
But the reality is that we never take enough time to just sit back and reflect and heal and love on ourselves. So with this episode, I want to do that with all of you guys today. So we made it to our very end of the season. So I'm very happy about that. Let's jump into it. So before we go and start the journey of reflection, I want to talk about what each of you do today and who you are today. So just tell me something briefly about the work that you do or how you show up in the world, or who are you now? Like, talk to me. Gigi, I'll start with you since I'm staring in your direction. Tell me something.
Yes, so today my work falls in the lines of I'm a peer care navigator, so just a person with lived experience, helping others find their way out and into getting services and healing.
Thank you.
I do a lot of trainings, training various professionals, working directly with survivors, consulting with a lot of nonprofit on various things.
Amazing. Sunny?
So outside of being a survivor leader, I recently started college, which, years ago I never thought I would do. And I'm a criminal justice major, and, I'm going to school in hopes of becoming a defense attorney so that I can defend those in the court of law who were in my position before.
I love that. First of all, congratulations on college. Okay, that is not no easy feat.
Thank you.
And for those of you guys that are listening, if you did not catch our last episode or one of our previous episodes with Shamere and I talking about survivors who are criminalized, please go and check that out. But okay, I'm so happy for you. So how did you guys reach this place? Would you say the places that you guys all just described that you are now, would you say that it came from your own will and determination, or would you say that you had somebody helping and holding your hand along the way? Would you say it's a mix of both? Anybody can start.
I can start. I think in terms of the work that I do in the movement, it started with someone introducing me to the idea. Kevin Bales really told me, because at the point where I met Kevin, he had wrote about my story in his book, The Slave Next Door, and I was still in this place of hurt, not understanding what had happened to me, and not understanding how I could move forward. And then when I met Kevin and Kevin introduced me to this idea of public speaking, I looked at him as he was crazy. Like, no one wants to hear about what happened to me. Nobody cares, right? And when I saw the impact that I had after my first speaking engagement, and it wasn't related anything, it had nothing to do with trafficking. The person was impacted by he was bullied throughout his life, and I realized the impact that I had there. It motivated me to continue. I am in a place in my faith, which, and when you talk about faith and being a survivor, when you grow up in church and you believe in this God, and then you had this experience, you question, well, where's this God that allowed these things to happen to me? So reconnecting with God and strengthening my faith in God, I realized that I am the light. It's like, you've been doing this and I've been doing this for 13 years. last year was 12 years. So you've been doing this for 12 years, right? And you're like, wait, you're looking to others as, you know, they're the light, but you are the light. You know, so
I love that. Gigi, what would you say helped you get to where you are today?
So I lost my employment, came across a training, was intrigued. During that training on the domestic violence, this woman was speaking, and I was like, oh my God. So she really like drew me in. I was like, wow, I want to be empowered like her. When we got to the last part of it, and then I found out my narrative, I was like, I want to volunteer and become a part of this movement so that when somebody's in the audience and they're like, how can I, who can I, where can I want to be able to be a model, a role model, like, yes, come up to me, let me help you get resources. That's what really put me on the path, and here I am 9 years later.
Wow. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you for no, thank you. I'm so okay. Sunny, so you're actually the youngest in the room, right?
Hi.
I'm not gonna expose your age or anything like that. What would you say for you has helped you get to where you are today? Because you're the youngest in the room, yet you're still already a prominent survivor leader. So what has helped you in your journey?
Thank you. I think as far as external support and will, I think it was a combination of both. Sometimes when you've been exposed to certain hardships from a young age, you think that it's normal. That's what everyone goes through. So I was unaware of how my experience was not, exactly the norm. And someone had to, and it wasn't until I was at rock bottom that I was put in the place where I could meet people who started introducing me to even the fact that I am a survivor. Actually, it was through getting to know other survivors that I got into the movement, and watching their strength and their journey, and these were my peers, it really motivated me to begin my own, not only my own journey of being a survivor leader, but my own healing journey. I thought that I kind of had it all together until I did a deeper dive into myself and realized that there was a lot under the surface. I had to draw in on that inner strength. This journey requires a kind of strength that at the time you may not even know that you have, but you have to find it in order to keep going. And there was a lot of moments like that.
What I love about what you all just said, I'm hearing a recurring theme, right? Definitely inner strength. I think every single one of us in this room had to draw on ourselves and rely on ourselves to get to where we are. Yeah. But also, each one of you named another survivor sister or another person in the movement that helped you get there. And I think what, for me, that highlights is the importance of survivor sisterhood, the importance of finding your community, your people. Like, we could walk alongside many different groups of individuals at many different times, and we can make acquaintances and make friends and find camaraderie in any space just because survivors are amazing and we just know how to adapt. But there's nothing better, in my opinion, than finding people who can come from different states, different countries, different places, different walks of life, different outcomes in their walk of life, and still find time to get back to each other and say, yep, I know what that's like. Yeah, I've been there. Yes, I can relate. That is something that is so beautiful. So just to see that you guys found somebody in your journeys that helped you to kind of hold your hand for a second and say, look, I got you while you coming out of this, I think is really beautiful.
And I think it's important for us to also acknowledge the survivor leaders who have paved the way for all of us to have this opportunity right now. And I'm talking about survivor leaders like Marion Hatcher, Audrey Morrissey, Kathleen Mitchell, right, who were... for me, I call them the movement moms, right? And I listen to like their experiences and, you know, their coaching on, you know, when they started this, how they didn't have opportunities like we have now. Like they have a moment like this where we can sit and talk like this. So just want to acknowledge those individuals who've gone before us, other survivor leaders who are doing this work before us and kind of pave the way so that we can have the opportunities that we have now.
No, I appreciate that. And for all the other survivors that are twice my age, 10 years plus my age, who have been doing this work for the longest, who have done it when there were no resources, when trafficking wasn't defined in the penal code yet, when cops were still arresting children for I'm putting in quotes, child prostitution charges and teen prostitute charges. For all of our survivor foremothers who have worked their butts off to allow us this opportunity, thank you. Thank you. We see you, and your work has not gone in vain. Also to all of the survivors we lost, especially in the last couple of years or so.
Yes.
All right. Because we gonna go to church on this episode today, okay?
Yes.
It's the last episode, and I want to finish strong for the season. So this whole episode is it's all about reflecting, but I call it what you wish you knew. Now, one thing that I think I can speak for everybody in this room in saying that there was a time that in your successful survivor leadership, your successful life as it is right now, there's something that was in the back of your mind that you like, if only I knew that 10 years ago, or only if somebody would have told me this when I was in this particular stage or this particular age, maybe my life would be so different, right? And I think we, as our years go on and as our time goes on outside of our exploitation, I think that we learn something new to add to that list more and more. So I want to take a little trip back in time, if that's okay with y'all. So Shamere, I want to start with you. If you could go back in time and get face to face with little Shamere while she was in the life, what would you tell her?
Like if I could go back in time, I would have gone to trial, like knowing what I know now. And this is something that I've always said, because I was just so fearful of, like, if I go to trial, they're saying I can take a plea and get probation, but going to trial, I'm going to do all these years in prison. So had I know what I know now about trafficking, if I knew that back then, I would have gone to trial to say this is why I shouldn't be criminalized, right? So the Shamere today, I feel like, want to go back in time and be like, no, I am a victim in every sense of the term victim. I shouldn't be criminalized. Here is why I shouldn't be criminalized, to set precedents, right? So that others aren't criminalized, right? So that's just one thing, like when I thought about today, that piece.
That's not even the one that I had in my head for myself, but I could definitely relate. When I was, it's related but unrelated. I was a kid when I first got subpoenaed for grand jury testimony. And now we are working on doing better, especially in New York State, at trying to change the laws around child participation in these kind of things, or teenage participation. But I feel like I didn't know my rights back then. I didn't know what I could try to fight and so I would just try. I mean, I didn't want to do it, but I went along with a lot of what was told to me. And I don't know, you saying, like, I would have fought back then. I would have actually tried to plead my case. I feel like I would have done the same. I would have tried to, like, put a stop to what they were telling me I needed to accept, and just had done it. Gigi, what would you tell young Gigi?
I think for me, just knowing that there were others out there. Because in my time period, I'm the oldest here. So it wasn't talked about. You know, you were just shh. you know. I think that also I would tell myself, always follow your intuition, that inner voice. I fought against it. I would tell myself, you are so powerful, and I gave all that power away to so many. And now that I'm older, I'm like, do I have any left? But I do, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be here.
Amen. Yes.
I love that. Sonny? I would say, what would you say to young Sonny? But you're kind of young.
I kind of still am young Sonny,
Yes,
but younger Sonny.
Younger Sonny. What would you tell younger Sonny?
I would tell myself that I used to have this belief that I wouldn't make it on my own. If I did leave, I wasn't gonna make it. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't strong enough, you know? And those messages were being told to me by the people around me who wanted to keep me in the situation that I was in. And I believed them wholeheartedly. And I would look myself in the eye and I would tell her that she has everything she needs inside of her to make that jump, to make that step, to take that step. And not only to just survive, but I can flourish. There is more. There's so much more to life. There's so much more to me than my current circumstances at that time. When I was in the life, you know, when you're in the life, there's a lot of people that they're gonna come up and they're gonna make these big promises to you. You know, I can do this for you. I can change your life. But at the end of the day, when I think back, the person who made the most substantial changes in my life was me. It came from me. Now, of course, I didn't do it alone, but the majority of the work in my life to get me where I am was me. It was not them.
I'm smiling right now because you weren't even here for one of our previous episodes where I was talking with Shamere, and Shamere literally said, it's not X, Y, and Z that's doing the hard work. It comes from us first. It starts with us. It's like, that's crazy. The universe is talking right now.
Yeah.
Sonny, I've asked everybody that have done our episode, so, you know, if this is okay to ask you, how old were you when you were first trafficked?
I was 16 years old.
And you're not that much older now. I'm not going to get into that. But just to see how wise you are in the short amount of years from the time that you exited to now is remarkable.
Thank you.
And that's one thing I could say about every woman sitting before me in this room right now is that we were remarkable by nature, but our lived experience has made us something extraordinary that I'm not gonna mess up this mascara I have on, so we're not gonna cry, but I just had to get that out. So I think I asked myself this question and I could have thought of a long, hard, educated answer, and honestly the first two things that came up for me of what I would tell younger Mel, the first one was that boy didn't like you. And when I say that boy, I'm talking about every man that was really a child molester in hindsight that I was like, that's my boyfriend. He just likes me because I'm mature for my... No, he didn't. 33 and 12 don't make sense to me, okay? So that was the first thing that came to mind. And then I think the other thing that I would tell myself, not just younger Mel, but also to any survivor listening right now, is that no matter what, it wasn't your fault. And I know it sounds cliche, but in my story and a lot of other people's lived experiences as well, I think that there was a moment or a thing or something that happened where we blame ourselves because we feel like we contributed. Even if we know, like in the moment you might not know, but even if we learn later that the rape and the abuse and all of that was not our fault, there's still a little piece of us inside that feel like, yeah, but
if I didn't say,
if I didn't wear,
if I wasn't there,
didn't go, right? If I didn't talk to, if I didn't text him back, if I didn't call, like, and I think that in the beginning, it's like no matter how much as a survivor you try to fight and heal and push to believe and understand that none of this was our fault, there's still a part of us that takes blame.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly believe, because I don't know everybody's story in detail, but I feel like that comes from the psychological abuse that we have endured by our traffickers, by our handlers, by our recruiters, by every man who's purchased us, every man who's raped us. I feel like these were the things that were subconsciously and consciously instilled in us. So because we were kind of like, because we were forced to, I see you, Shamere. Because we were forced to take on this role of like, you made the choice. You the one that put yourself in the situation. You the one making the money, right? All of this in air quotes, by the way, right? You the one that did this. You the one that did that. Some part of us is like, if I had worn a less tighter skirt, if I didn't wear that see-through shirt, if I didn't call so-and-so, so I really think that I would tell little Mel, none of that was my fault.
And in addition to what you just said, Mel, with, you know, the lies told by our abusers, I want to add that in addition to that, it's the stigmas of society.
Thank you.
Right? The stigmas of society, because I like to draw this parallel when we're talking about trafficking, right? So I wear my short skirt, right? And society says I'm what?
Yep.
Right? But I go jogging, right?
Again.
In tights, in a sports bra. The idea is that if I'm in my short skirt and my little top, little clothes. If I go jogging in my short tights and my sports bra, it's a little clothes. But when you look at the two and you put the two side by side, one is deemed or stereotyped by society as, you know, you are whatever name, because the names vary.
Talk about it.
Right? But then this person, oh, they're just trying to get fit.
They're healthy.
We're always judged about what we're wearing and all this. But look within their own environment, their own household, where they're coming from, their community. They're talking so much about us. But in my neighborhood, I live over there, I've seen them walk around with no bra see-through. And everybody's like, oh, it's okay. They're Fendi's and, you know, and here I come and they're like, oh my God.
You know, for me, again, there's a lot of things that survivors of the sex trade and survivors of prostitution go through and experience that are very parallel to the lived experiences of women in general that are non-survivors as well. So a lot of this intersects, but I think there's a heightened hypersensitivity, I guess, with us because of the things that we've experienced and the things that have been told to us. And going off of what you were saying, Gigi, you know, for me, like, for those who are watching, I'm a bigger woman, right? I'm not a skinny mini, and I never really was. And even as a kid, when I was slimmer, I always had bigger attributes. So I absolutely can understand I can absolutely relate to what you're saying about this idea of going to school in uniform or in dress code, and, you know, somebody slimmer than me gets to wear the cute little mini skirt with the knee-high socks, and I can't do that because my thighs are bigger, right? That's just an example of something that I've gone through just as a girl in society.
Yes.
But now as a survivor, couple that experience with a voice in the back of your head from a trafficker in the day telling you, oh, that's why you can't do nothing. You ugly. You too big. Nobody gonna want you. That's why you got to stick with me. And the spiral continues. And now what started as I just simply need to change my outfit turned down into a full-blown depression and PTSD of thinking of everything a trafficker or a sex buyer has said to me, or somebody telling me like, this is the only way you're gonna make money because nobody will have you otherwise. Right? Those and this is what I want folks to understand. This is why I think this conversation is so important. The whole podcast is important because we talk about all of these different nuances, but in this room, being able to tell your younger self something that you probably couldn't tell your younger self when you were your younger self is a beautiful thing.
I wish I would have known that I wasn't a fetish, that I wasn't a BBW that was a fetish, that the only type of men I can get was because they liked a fetish. No, I'm big, bold, and beautiful. That is how I'm made. And it doesn't mean that I need to date this type or be in love with this type, you know, because I could have found healthier. So today, I'm happy that I embrace myself. I embrace my body because I've been like this all my life.
Right. And now I want to talk to some of the women that are listening, and I want to know what you want the women to know. And by the women, I'm talking about the women who are listening who may have just recently exited the game, the life, right? The women who might still be in the life, walking the streets, especially here in New York City, where we know that there's been this heightened increase in our tracks in Brooklyn and Queens, all over, right?
Yeah.
Those women, the women who want to get out and feel like they can't do nothing about that, the women who haven't realized that they're being harmed yet. What do you want to say to any one of those women that are listening?
I would say, first of all, I'm sending you so much love. So much love. Because you deserve it. That's first and foremost. Second, and I'm going to speak to my own experience a little bit, just to kind of preface what I'm going to say. But I think one of the biggest things that helped me was silencing a lot of the external and internal noise that I was experiencing, especially with my generation and the generation of like the internet and the age of technology. There is so much everywhere. Everybody has an opinion. And people speak with such conviction. It is so hard to not take other people's words as law.
Wow,
it is hard to know who you are, to what you believe, what you stand for. It is hard to know what you are worth during this time. It is so hard because our world is so oversaturated right now with opinions and information, and finding that silence was so important, and I really urge you and I encourage you to find that silence. I used to roll my eyes when people would talk about meditation because I don't want to listen to my thoughts. It gets dark up in there. But I needed to go there. I needed to find that silence inside. And meditation really helped, and it kind of coins back to the conversation that we were having earlier. I think that especially in my generation and for all women, desirability is this really big and confusing thing, especially for young women now. There's so many, it's like, on the one hand, you're receiving the message that you need to be desirable in order to be worthy, in order to make it in your career, in order to find love, in order to be respected. You need to be desired. But on the same coin, if you are too desirable, now you're all those names that we were talking about earlier. And now you need to tone it down. You need to quiet yourself. Now you're doing too much. The skirt is too short. Too much of this showing. And it is so hard to find the balance. It is so hard to find who you are in all of that. And it becomes very confusing, and that confusion can leave us vulnerable to predators who come in with the answers.
That's good.
Finding that inner silence for me was everything. So I love you. I'm sending you love, and find that silence. Find your voice.
I told you we were going to be preaching on this episode. Yes. Shamere, Gigi, what would you guys tell any of those women listening? What about the women that are out there right now who got a boyfriend that they don't even know is their trafficker yet?
I remember when I was in the life, I didn't think that anyone cared or anyone wanted to listen, but people do care. As much evil as we have in the world, there is as much good. There are people who want to help. There are people who want to walk alongside you. So those are lies from the pit of hell. And whether that person is a family member or another sister survivor, right? There are people who want to help you. And I think sometimes we remain in the life because of the fear that takes us over, that I'm too afraid to trust myself to come out, and I'm relying on my own strength. But the strength does start with you. Trust yourself. You put your trust in someone else, or you may have put your trust in someone else that got you into the position that you are now. Now put that same trust in yourself.
That's big.
Right? Ooh. Put that same trust in yourself and just take that one step. And when you take that one step, be honest with that step, so that when someone comes alongside of you, those individuals who want to truly help knows how to truly help. Because sometimes when we come out the life, we're still stuck on the lie.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. I love everybody say yeah in unison. Right? I love that.
We are still, like my name in the life was Barbie. And I remember when I came out the life, I still had this, because my trafficker was like, you're the top doll and you're a black Barbie now. And remember, all the doll wants to be a Barbie. So when I came out the life, I had this chip on my shoulder like, girl, you a Barbie. And I was still stuck on the things that I had to find out, like, what I like to eat, how I like to wear my nails. Like, I like color in my hair. But I was still believing those lies by my trafficker. Like, you have to have black nails. Your nails can only be French. You have to wear straight hair, right? You have to eat this. You have to look this certain way. Which is like, but hold up. What does Shamere like? Right. Shamere like a little color. Shamere like some color on her nails. Shamere, you know what I'm saying? So for those who are out there, and especially the individuals who are, you feel stuck. You feel like there's no other option. Trust yourself. Take that first step and see what happens. Try a different approach.
You know what I love about what you said, Shamere? I love everything that y'all say. Y'all are amazing. We talk in previous episodes about how survivors struggle with trust, right? Yes. Just externally. And in one of our previous episodes, go check that out if you haven't already. I was talking with one of our guests who was talking about, we also need to confront the role that we play in hurting ourselves after exit, right? We were talking a little bit about, like, why are you blocking yourself from healing? And that's a whole nother episode we could get into. But when we talked about distrusting external factors, she talked a little bit about trusting herself and sometimes how we as survivors struggle to do that, especially when you're first exiting. And hearing you saying, like, to all of y'all ladies out there listening, trust yourself. It just brought me back to the first time I can remember, like, being in handcuffs. This was not my my last exit, right? But the first time I'm in handcuffs and I'm on this car, I'm on an unmarked car, and I'm seeing the lights. It's nighttime, and I'm seeing the people looking at me, and I just remember feeling so, like, angry but disgusted at the same time with myself. And I knew somewhere in my head, the thought was floating, like, I want to get out. I'm over this. I'm done with this shit. But something I wasn't being pushed yet. Like, I feel like I was waiting to feel the heel in my back to be like, just go already. But I wouldn't do it. And if I was back there now, I would have loved to hear you say this. I would have loved this in, this was like iPod days. I would have loved to hear this in my headphones. I would have loved to hear somebody tell me, like, just trust yourself. I think sometimes we know what keeps us in the life. We know the things that keep people there and why it's so difficult to exit, which we talk about as well in other episodes. But that, not just the fear of the external factors, but sometimes the fear of, like, I don't know if I'm going to make it on the other side of the world. I don't know if I can handle it. You mentioned this, Sonny. You were saying, like, I don't know if I can. Sometimes it's not just the fact that there's a trafficker in the picture. Sometimes it's not just the fact that maybe you're a familial trafficking survivor and your mom or dad or your aunt or whoever is doing this to you. Like, sometimes it's really just like, okay, now I'm in a position where I could run, but what's out there for me on the other side? I don't know. I don't know how to manage money. I don't know how to have a regular job. I don't know how to do X, Y, Z. This is what I know, and I've mastered it. I've mastered the lies. And that's the other part of this. Like, I love that you mentioned that, because we're told so many things that we are forced to believe in order to appease our traffickers and whatnot. But then there's also a lot of times when those lies become our reality, right? You believed you was Barbie for real, right?
Oh, yeah.
I had a lot of names in life. It switched depending on the location. But the reality was that I'm sitting here and I believed the lie that I was the one in the driver's seat making all the choices.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm sitting here like it took me years to get to a point and be like, baby girl, you're 14 years old. What choices you was making?
100%.
You know what I'm saying? But here I'm thinking because I read a book here and there, I'm smarter than the rest, right? And I the same way you had a chip on your shoulder, Shamere, feeling like, you know, like I'm the prettiest in the room. My trafficker got in my head so much and made me believe that you got like you might, because I was a bottom, right? And let's be honest about that. So the reality was that I was being constantly told, you the top dog, you in control, this is your ship, you gotta run it. And what people don't understand is that kind of manipulation, because now not only are you lying to me, but you got me believing it about myself. So now when somebody stepped to me and you're in your absence, I gotta believe that to keep going. You know what I'm saying?
But you know what? As you were talking about, I thought about, I was engaged twice. And I thought about my second engagement and why it wouldn't have worked and why I called it off. And this was Shamere, like being in the movement how many years and going all these places that someone would never know about me. So when this man proposed to me, right? You know what I thought into myself? The message that's not just the lie that was not just told by my trafficker, but also told by society. You can't turn a hoe into a housewife. Right? So I remember like for 2-3 days, I'm saying, like I was in this disbelief. And because I had this disbelief, I sabotaged that relationship, believing that I'm not good enough. Even though this man knew the whole story. And he said, listen, I don't care. That's not the person I met. I met this person right now, and we are going to move forward. That because I still believe that lie. And that's when you have to be honest with yourself.
I
right?
call that on mask.
Right?
And face your fears. Yes.
You got to really say, Shamere, what is the real issue here? Because what we do then is that we point fingers. Oh, I'm upset because you said this and you did this. And you have to be like, stop, girl, look in the mirror. The truth of the matter is, I was still believing that lie. So I was empowering other survivors, mentoring other survivors, right? Speaking here, there, and everywhere, but holding on to that lie.
And it becomes so deeply, like for me, a lot of these lies were so, I'm saying, deeply embedded in my subconscious mind. It took when I was at rock bottom. Someone like really, really telling me like, you think you're empowered? You think you're in control doing this? That's what, no. And because I really believe that, and even you know, and even right before I had exited, I was so deeply embedded in this narrative of I have control, and I think part of it was survival. Like you were saying, like I had to believe this story in order to survive, because if I didn't, it would have killed me.
That's the story for, and Gigi, I'm gonna turn to you in a second, right? But that's a story that majority, if not all, of the survivors in the sex trade believe. We are forced, whether physically, like by knife point, gunpoint, whatever, or mentally, somewhere psychologically, we are forced to believe that we are in the driver's seat in order to accept something that could otherwise not be acceptable. I'm gonna say that again in case y'all didn't get that, right? We had to believe that we were in the driver's seat to accept something that would otherwise not be acceptable. This system of prostitution, sex trafficking, human that shit ain't normal. Right? No. It's not normal. It became our normal after being in it, and it don't take a lot down to break a dog. All right? So if you could be in it for 24 hours and your whole life changed. Now imagine people that have been doing this for weeks, months, days, hours. You know what I'm saying? So like, for us to sit there and go through that and be broken down like that, and to now the only way, like you said, Sunny, that you can get through it is to believe that you got this. Yeah, it could be that this sex buyer is physically raping you, But you sat there and be like, nope, I'm on an island. I'm controlling the situation. He's just doing whatever he's doing.
Yep.
You had to make it seem like you were we're not even going to fake that we were enjoying it. It was more that in our mind, we were faking that he's not doing this to me. I'm doing it to me. Mm-hmm. Right? In a both literal and a metaphorical sense. Like you said, Shamere, the society and how they played a role in that judgment. But now that I'm actually trafficked, and now that I've actually gone through that, having to like constantly think about, well, 3 men raped me today, 10 men raped me today, and then so on and so forth, it was hard for me to get out of my mind when my trafficker would tell me, like, you a slut, nobody wants you. You washed up already. You damaged. I already broke you in. Then now you start to count all the people who have purchased sexual access to you. Mm-hmm. Now you don't. What's the point of going? Why not? Why I gotta go square? Why I gotta go square? Because nobody's gonna want me out there. So it really resonated with me when you said you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. Gigi, I want to turn to you real quick. So I was asking the ladies what we would say to other ladies that are listening, right? But now I want to ask you, what would you say to the men that are listening? I hope there are men listening. But I think oftentimes we talk a lot about this issue, and because it's gender-based violence and because it's related to sex in some capacity, people think that this is just predominantly a women's issue. But we need everybody, right? Mm-hmm, so what would you say to any men that might be listening or watching this?
Okay, so I talk to a lot of men. I have more male friends than I do females, right? All my life, I was a tomboy like that, right?
Perfect one to answer the question.
Yeah, and I kind of liked it because the other one had me like, so I was about to start crying, but thank you for bringing me back, right?
I got you.
So, when I have conversation with men, it's funny. They always say that they can look at you and they could tell what type of, like, freak you is, what type of this you are, just something about us. They can read us like that. And then they say, Gigi, well, what are you doing today? And today I'm like, I'm in the movement and I'm trying to bring light and bring others into positivity, right? And I'm like, why don't you help? Like, why don't you join us? And for those men that say, oh, I really, really want to do it, but my biggest thing is the feminists. Like, they're too angry.
That's real.
They don't want to listen to me. They're not hearing me. Put that to the side, because in your family, you have a female or a male that this can happen to. Okay? Next. You're going to come say, well, why should I tell him not to do this and that? Well, when you're walking down the block or you're wherever setting you in and you see a little child passing by and they're like, look at that. And, oh, I wonder what that's about. You know it's wrong. Speak up. We need men to stand by our side. There are legions of women throughout the world doing this on their own. We are not scared. We are not afraid because where we came from. But we do these trainings, these educations, these speaking things, and we go by ourselves out in the street. And it don't stop us. Every day that I do something, I don't know if I'm going to wake up the next day. I don't know I'm going to be gone. So I spread who I am so the seeds can keep getting planted. Stand by us. Just stand by us. We need more men to stand by us, because then we could start pushing back really harder. I don't know. I need a word for that. But, I'm gonna let it go right now because I'm about to keep talking.
No, that's right. Push back harder.
Push back harder, right? I mean, what else do we need? Like, how do you stand in a room and all you see is legions of women and then these handful of men that is just as tough as us standing amongst all those women?
Absolutely.
They need their brothers too. Come and join us. Yes. Don't be afraid. They're afraid to stand up to the next man.
They are.
But we're not afraid.
Because I feel like a lot of the things that men tend to do is for male validation.
Talk about it.
Toxic masculinity at its finest.
100%. And it does not make you weak to be strong with another individual.
I love that.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my words and putting in that straight, direct bullet point. Show your strength.
What I want a lot of the men to know, right? This is not just a feminist issue. This is not just an academic issue. This is not one of those issues for the ladies. This is not like another Me Too movement. And I think that a lot of men are either intimidated by women who have feminist values that fight the patriarchy, because there's this false idea.
Yes.
Well, in part, there's this false idea that we're man haters if we're for women's rights, or that we're man haters if we go against gender-based violence, or if we fight those systems, right? The reality is, every single one of these women in this room, and every single one of the women and survivors that we know out there, cool as hell. All of us are down-to-earth people. None of us are sitting here with, I was going to say with our nun cap, but then I saw this and then I was like, I don't know, maybe it is. But, none of us are sitting here with a halo being like holier than thou, And I think that a lot of men are like, oh, I don't want to get into that feminist stuff. But the reality is, like Sunny was starting to say, when your bro is doing wrong. When you see something that don't look right. When your bro introduces you to some girl he like, when she look a little too young for him, right? And I think the reality is that because of this toxic need for other men's validation to prove you a man, I think it is so cool to see men being trendsetters, right? And unfortunately, peer pressure happens to folks at all different ages and stages of life. But this idea, this need to prove their machismo and all of this thing, it really gotta stop. And I think you're a lot cooler if you support the women, but that's just my personal opinion. But go ahead, Shamere. I saw you wanted to jump in.
I think we need more men to be at the table to counter what we are seeing in society, that there are good men in society.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if I am growing up and all I am seeing is, well, there's this allegation against this person and this is the image that I have seen as a man, this is why men are needed at the table for that positive reinforcement, so that we can see that there are good men. There are men who are not going to purchase sex. There are men who are not going to attend the strip clubs. There are men that are going to protect women. There are men that are going to defend us. But if that's not what we're seeing,
Then
right? Because a lot of guys would say, well, like you said, Gigi, you talk to your friends. They don't think that there's space at the table for them. They're like, well, what can I do? Right? And even, Gigi, you probably can attest to this. Like when you talk to your friends, they're thinking they got to go out and rescue somebody from somewhere. That's as a male, that's what I got to do. I got to go find someone that's been gone and snatch them back. But there's so many other positions that you can play as a man to just have a seat at the table. And if you're out there and you don't know, but your heart is hearing this podcast right now, and you are drawn, you are moved to do something, get involved.
Absolutely.
Contact somebody and let us have this conversation, because here's the reality. You got 4 of us sitting here. Did any of you have an idea of what your role would look like the first day you started in this movement?
No.
Hell no.
Right? It took others to come alongside us and have conversations, and we had different experiences. So if you are that man that's listening and you're moved by this, and you're like, you know what, Gigi is right, Sunny is right, Mel is right, I gotta do something. Something inside of me telling me to do something. I just don't know what to do. Come to the table. Let's figure it out together.
And I'm so sorry. Because another thing with it is they're afraid, right? They're afraid to be that one dude out of 10 that's going to stand up, right?
That's good.
But a victim is afraid. Every day that victim is going through so much. So by you standing up, I know in New York and in New Jersey, there are male nonprofit organizations that would be happy to help you. Join them. Take a training, volunteer, and start mentoring some of these men.
I love that. I mean, there's a couple things, Shamere, that you said that I really love. One of them is highlighting the fact that there are a lot of men who don't buy sex, right?
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite fun facts, because I think a lot of people, when we do this work, when they hear us speak, they think that there's all these like bad players out there. The reality is the majority of men don't purchase sex.
Right.
The problem is out of the small percentage of those who do, it's still a very large number. And we have nothing, like Shamere said, to compare that to if y'all don't come out.
Right.
Yeah.
We need y'all to come out.
Right.
I love that Gigi said they're afraid to be the 1 out of 10. But you know what I found through studies and research and all of that? Out of the 10, 7 of them want to come out too. But they all afraid. It takes one of y'all to be bold and brave, to just step up to the plate. And like Shamere said, if you don't know where to start, ask us. It's not that hard. We're not going to bite. Okay, so we spoke to our ladies, our precious, precious ladies. We put out a call to men. Shout out to Ted Bunch with that one, right? Now I want y'all to tell me or tell them, what would you want to say to any allies or advocates in general about the journey of survivors after exploitation? And y'all could each pick one main point that you think they need to know. That could be anything about what it actually looks like or something that you think that they need to be doing. So, to any allies and advocates that are non-survivors that are out there listening to this, what do you want to say?
Let's start.
I hear that. ...
Let's start with
I'm going to lean back. Let me get comfortable.
mirroring traffickers' behaviors. Right? Because a lot of time we find our allies, they mirror traffickers' behaviors. It's just not coupled with the physical abuse. Notice I said the physical abuse. But when you do things like turn survivor leaders against each other, that's psychological abuse. That's what the trafficker did amongst the stable. He turns survivors against each other, right? So when you do that, when you re-exploit us by having us share our stories and not pay us, that's mirroring traffickers' behaviors. And I know that you guys are going to touch on other things. So my last thing that I want to say is that we are our own unique individuals. We are not going to agree with everything that you say, and we're not a puppet. You can't tell me, oh, you know what, I want you to work with me as long as you say this. Right? And I feel like we have a movement where we have allies where, you know what, we can be cool as long as we're speaking the same language. There's no room for differences to present itself, right? Like, you know, there are differences amongst all of us, right? We're not going to agree on every single topic, but how do we disagree with something but focus on the mission?
Go ahead, Sonny.
The first thing I want to say, first and foremost, is to listen. Your ears are some of the most powerful things you could use, okay? A lot of times, you know, people want to jump in, they want to do, they want to save, they want to help, they want to... How are you going to do any of that if you don't listen? Survivors are not always going to act in the ways that you want. We all come from different paths of life. And at the end of the day, we all have had, you know, experiences that we had to grow from, okay? And we are still growing. This is a process.
But here's the thing about listening too.
Okay.
When you listen, that's followed up by action. Right? So it's not just sitting here and listen. Like, we can listen to this podcast, but that has to be followed by the action.
Oh, no, 100%. I think that sometimes people have so many ideas on what they think is going to help.
Yeah.
What I think is going to help you. How are you going to know what's going to help me if you don't hear me? Keep an open mind, because what you think is going to help somebody, and this could be an individual, this could be an organization, what you think is going to help somebody from an outsider's perspective may not necessarily be helpful. And the only way for you to understand what is truly going to help a survivor is by listening to their experience.
I'm so tired, personally, of hearing, not towards you, in general, in this movement, and this is my message to my allies and advocates, I am so tired of hearing that phrase, listen to survivors. It feels like we are constantly repeating ourselves, and they not hearing it.
That's why I said action.
No, exactly.
That's exactly
right?
why I said
right?
action. Yeah.
And I love that because they need to actively listen to what we're saying and actually absorb it. The problem is they listening.
But you got to listen to understand,
Not listen to respond.
Right.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right? That's the
Yeah.
problem. And
Yeah.
and you know what? I'm going to use this opportunity to call it out. I think we've been trying to keep it real PG on this podcast, and I think we've been doing a good job of that. Well, y'all weren't with me, but I think I've been doing a good job of that. But the reality is that if we truly, this whole podcast is about following the trajectory of a survivor from the time they exit to the time they become a leader. And we cannot address true survivor leadership without addressing true collaboration. And granted, like Shamere said before, right? Like Sunny said earlier in this episode, our leadership stems from our own inner strength.
Yes.
And nobody can take that away or minimize that.
Yes.
However, we would all be lying if we said that we didn't need the movement to make grand change on a systemic or a systematic scale, right?
Oh, yeah.
But on the flip side, right, if the movement is going to continue to underestimate the intelligence, power, and incompetence of a survivor, if the movement at large is going to falsely stand in solidarity with the survivors in this room and beyond, if the movement is going to continue to say, I could rock with you as a survivor if you just make sure not to say X, Y, and Z words, or I only rock with you at our gala when we need you to speak, or I only rock with you if you share your testimony at our church, right? That's not true solidarity.
Yes,
That's not true collaboration.
Yes.
And allies and advocates, if you are listening, if you are watching this, if you want to truly support survivors and survivor leadership, like truly down to your core, you got to step back. Do not ever think that your passion for this issue, that your degrees in whatever the field is, that your years of experience in this field, in your social work, clinical settings, and blah, 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 could ever trump or surpass what we've seen with our own two eyes, our own two hands, our own 2 feet, and to everybody else that don't have all of those body parts that have been through this, right? And I think that my message to our allies and advocates is to really reevaluate your position in your solidarity with us. If you claim that you stand with survivors, really take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you doing everything you can to support survivors and making systemic change?
We need our space to be authentic and to be ourselves. And we don't want to jeopardize not being able to be a part of the movement because there's there in the dark that really needs to see us to be like, okay, she can do it, I can do it. So that's what we mean by push, move back a little bit, right? But this is the truth. And I'm asked through my own experience. When I am forced to talk a certain way or use language this way or stay on script or hit the point that you want in front of the senator or the government official, whoever, you're taking away from me because that's not where I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable being myself and speaking freely. And society needs to accept it. Just like we have, as survivor leaders, have to accept so much of what's going on. And when you don't allow us to be authentic, yes, in public, I'm all like, I'm Gabrielle Prieto, right? But then when I go home, it destroys me. I feel defeated. And then what do? My self-doubt, my self-sabotage, because you're not allowing me to be who I am.
We're about to draw this to a close to end out our first season of Exit Wound. I'm just going to give y'all the floor to give any last words to whoever's listening. Our audience, our main audience for this podcast is other survivors, legislators, lawmakers, people in positions of power and authority in New York City. Men, hopefully. Let's get some men up in here, right? Instagram, TikTok. Everybody who will listen will be listening. What comes to mind? Anything you want to say to them about the journey of a survivor when they exit, or the journey of a survivor in exploitation?
I think the movement is at a place where people know what we need. They just need to do it. But the two words that comes to mind when you know what we need and you need to do it is grace and compassion. When I'm in this movement, I have to put on. Right? Like when I go to a conference, I have to put on. I have to dress this way and speak this way, because if I don't, then I don't fit the mold of that survivor leader. So showing that grace and compassion goes back to speaking about being your authentic self. Showing that grace and compassion goes back to listening.
I think that we can also look at it in a different perspective, that let's just take flowers. How many different types of flowers are there? That's how survivors leaders are, right? And that what we just need to do is just have acceptance, right? Because we are approved and we need to be acknowledged. And I think that we hit a lot, and I'm going to step back for that. That's how I'm going to end it.
I would say to everybody listening, whether you are a survivor in the life, survivor who's exited the life, you're a legislator, you're an ally, whomever, you have some sort of power. And I just want you to ask yourself, what is that power? And how can I use my power? You know, whether it's an internal power to uplift yourself, or the external power to uplift another. Where does your power lie? And how can you use it? And I think I'll leave it on that question.
Ladies, thank you so much for joining me on our final episode, but also for everything that you guys are, for everything that you guys were, how you guys are showing up in the world, the work that you do in this movement, and your commitment to survivors everywhere. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. So I want to end today by reminding folks of the purpose of this podcast. Our first goal was to create a platform for survivor voices to speak to each other, not just in here, but out there as well. For the survivors out there, I hope listening helped you feel a little less alone and maybe gave you some ideas for your future. Our other goal was to fight the misconceptions about the sex trade and about sex trafficking and prostitution survivors. It was important to me that this podcast would not feel like listening to a formal panel discussion or a policy meeting where people may be used to hearing survivor voices. I wanted people to hear us as the three-dimensional human beings that we are, and to come with us on this journey of exploitation and beyond. And to that point, there is a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is feeling bad or pity for someone. Empathy is actually understanding and sharing in someone's pain or feelings around an experience. I really wanted our non-survivor listeners to feel empathy, because I don't think anything really comes from sympathy besides a pat on the head. Empathy can elicit real change. So what do I ask of you all? I ask that you keep these conversations in your head as you go out and about in the world. When you walk past a strip club, when you see a young girl with an older boyfriend, when TikTok serves you sex trafficking conspiracy theories, or when your friend says sex work is sex positivity, remember the voices of my friends. Remember my voice. I'd like to thank all of my amazing guests. The 14 women who did not hesitate when I asked them to join me on this odyssey. Thank you for your vulnerability, your humor, and your insight. And most importantly, thank you for all of the work that you do, for supporting sex trade survivors and fighting for change in our communities and around the world. And thank you to Amplify Her, a foundation committed to uplifting the women and girls of New York City. Without your support and belief in us, this podcast would have not been possible. Thank you. Stay in touch. Follow the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women on social media, and be sure to follow all of our incredible guests in their work fighting against sexual exploitation. Sunny, do you mind closing us out?
Not at all. I move freely as I flow into the unknown with strength and peace. I'm grateful to be guided. Creature creative lives in you and me. She raised a magic in our voice to awake our kin, sing them up from sleep. Teach us all how to be grateful, the power of Earth's nature and ourselves indeed.